Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, education, technology, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guests Clarke Moderow and Rebecca Hewitt. Debbie is a writer and environmental storyteller, and Rebecca is an assistant professor of environmental studies at Amherst College. Together with artist Klara Maisch, they created the fascinating multimedia exhibition entitled Threshold 32 Degrees Fahrenheit that brings together art, ecology, and writing to explore environmental change in interior Alaska. Through Clara's artwork, Debbie's poetry, and Rebecca's field notes, the exhibition examines a critical tipping point, 32 degrees, when ice becomes water, and uses that threshold as a lens to explore climate change, ecological transformation, and our evolving relationship with the natural world, particularly in interior Alaska. First on view at the Museum of North in Fairbanks, Threshold 32 Degrees is currently on display at Oregon State University until February 7th, and then it'll be at Michigan State University from November 5th through December 13th. During the program, we're finding out why and how the exhibition came about, and in the process, come to better understand and appreciate the importance of paying closer attention to the world around us and to recognize how fragile and interconnected our systems truly are. Let's start by meeting Debbie and Rebecca and then hearing all about 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Welcome. So delighted you're both able to be here.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
That was quite an introduction. It was very, very thorough and actually inspiring for me to listen to.
Well, needless to say, your collaboration and work warrants definitely appreciation. Speaking of that, it's been really fascinating to read about the unique collaboration together with your thoughtful insight and commentary about climate change. I'm eager to hear more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if each of you would just briefly share a little bit more about your background, perhaps professional interest, current positions or product projects. Debbie, would you please begin?
Sure. I'm a New Englander from birth. Grew up in New England and moved to Alaska unknowingly when I came up here to climb a mountain in 1979, and I never left. So the journey was long but quick. At this point in time, I'm a writer. I am trained to be a nonfiction writer. I have a memoir out about running the Iditarod sled dog race, which I did 20 some years ago. But recently have expanded my horizons greatly by collaborating in this interdisciplinary collaboration.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you. Rebecca, welcome. A few words about yourself, please.
Sure. I'm an ecosystem ecologist and a faculty member in environmental studies at Amherst College. And my research is really focused on how plants and microbes interact and how they're impacted by different facets of climate change, changes in disturbance regimes like wildfire activity or
Mm.
permafrost thaw, and then also how those interactions between plants and microbes might actually strongly shape the ecosystem properties that we see in light of these changes that we're seeing in the environment. And most of that research at this point is occurring in Alaska. And I went up to Alaska in 2008 to do my PhD. And it was a transformative experience on a professional and personal level.
Mm.
And and so it's been really fantastic. I've got strong my annual migration to Alaska to interact with my research community and my extended family that lives up there, and being involved in this collaboration really strengthened that as well, because it highlights deep connection with the landscape in a much more multifaceted way than other projects that I've been involved with.
Terrific, terrific. Debbie, can you please start by sharing how this collaboration came about and developed and led to what we're going to be able to have a glimpse of soon?
Certainly. Becky, Klara, and I first met through a program called In a Time of Change. And it is a program run through the University of Alaska, and it facilitates creative collaboration between arts, sciences, and humanities. Klara and I found each other in one of the cohorts of ITOC, an early version of Boreal Forest Stories. And I started writing with Klara basically postcards, my words, short paragraphs, to Klara's quick sketches, and they would come back to me. And we went back and forth to see if we could work together. And the magic was there. We were both, this was in the middle of the pandemic. So we found our shared voices and immediately called Becky, who I'd already worked with a little bit, and said, can you be the third voice here? So the three of us worked together in a, I would say, a more spontaneous way. Through that ITOC iteration. And then about 3 years ago, we decided we wanted to do a major installation together. And so we set out to design and go take a really deep dive into the experience of winter during this time of extraordinary change in the boreal forest, to which we are all sort of intimately tied. Our individual connection with this landscape runs very, very deep.
Rebecca, the title, Threshold 32 degrees Fahrenheit, references a precise temperature. Why is that tipping point so central to this project?
Yeah, I think Debbie just touched on that we're sort of self-described winter people. We have a love of the winter landscape and cold dominated processes, I guess, is maybe a way I would refer to it. But 32 degrees Fahrenheit is that threshold between freezing and thawing. And so it's that transition between the frozen state and the liquid state of water that really has such an impactful influence on the ecology of the boreal forest, obviously the hydrology of the boreal forest, and it is really critical to a lot of the important feedbacks where the boreal forest is actually influencing global climate. And so we were able to focus in on that in terms of our love of a cold landscape and what it actually looks like and feels like as it's transitioning from a colder state to a warmer state. But then there were many opportunities to actually discuss the impact of that change in temperature on processes that are important to those of us that are situated or are passionate about the landscape of the boreal forest, but then also on a global level, since what's happening at high latitudes is really impacting all of us as global citizens. I think, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Just following up on extending maybe just a few more words of what you're saying right now, the importance of the boreal forest with regard to current ecological systems and why it's important to be studying right now.
Sure. So the boreal forest is really critical to the global climate system because it is the home or the storage of a tremendous amount of carbon. And most of that carbon is below ground in surface soils, but then also in permafrost soils. And so as those soils are subjected to warmer conditions or disturbances like the thawing of permafrost or wildfire activity, they've actually um, become vulnerable to release from the soil or the biosphere to the atmosphere. And so having more carbon in the atmosphere is obviously of great concern in relation to understanding the carbon cycle and meeting our climate goals.
We're fortunate to have a few images relating to the exhibition. And Debbie, before we hear about this piece, Fall by Klara, what does art offer, in your opinion, that scientific reports don't get at or make available about, in this case, climate change?
Ooh, that's a big, big question. Um, I I think the heart of our combined expression is to show the many dimensions of the topic of change at this threshold of 32 degrees. And as a poet in this case, as much as I am drawn to the bigger um, intangibles, possibly the philosophical matters about what this painting shows, which we'll get into in a minute. Um, to me, it's really critical that I understand what the data are, what really is happening in that bare trunk that has been invaded by the spruce bark beetle. And so I think that art in this painting by Claire, it shows many different dimensions. It's actually quite abstract and it's an unusual view. And so the art or the poetry can draw in one dimension of this churning change that is cycling always, that we're all part of. And Becky, excuse the pun, can sort of ground us in, okay, this is what we know. But then all of a sudden, Becky will come up with this zinger of a philosophical comment or an emotional one. And we realize that as Clara as painter, me as poet, Becky as scientist, we're we're much closer allies than we really think. And that's really the heart of the thing.
No, it's such a rich, rich collaboration and just offers viewers and others multiple pathways to appreciate the important topics you're covering here. Debbie, why don't we continue? If you'd share, please, read the wonderful poem you've written to go along with Clara's piece here, Fall.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Fall. First frost comes late. Cranberries ripen, blueberries wither. Mosses gather hints of gold. A queen bumblebee rests, awaiting a blanket of snow. Warm winds spin warning of winter's delay. Without insulation, the bee will die, exposed. Winners and losers emerge on the heated edge of change. Bark beetles rustle, spruce seep sap. Woodpeckers forage for larvae, browned needles fall.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Just a few words for the sake of time. The process you go through in writing, say this poem in particular.
Well, as a nonfiction writer that stumbled into this collaboration, this was originally a very long paragraph. Then I tried to turn it into what's called a prose poem, which is a shorter paragraph. And ultimately, I took several poetry classes and gave a stab at peeling away the layers of this story. However, this poetry lives with that painting and with Becky's field notes. And for instance, the queen bumblebee rests awaiting a blanket of snow. And then two stanzas later, without insulation, the bee will die. Central in this entire story is that snow which many people don't know, is an insulator. It insulates the ground. It keeps the bees safe. And so with freezing and thawing cycles, if there is no snow, the bee is vulnerable. Well, that the story of the bee as a central character in this piece is embellished by the field notes, by the paintings and the poetry. So I sort of fondly refer to the poetry as cheater poetry because it has illustrations and explanations.
No, but it speaks to the power of poetry to capture a subject, a situation in sort of minimal amount of words, but you really take away a similar message. But wonderful segue, Rebecca, to your field notes and a few words about maybe even assembling it, how you go about that, and your interpretation of relationship to Clara's piece.
Yeah, I might start with the latter point first, which is part of our process was thinking about characters like the bumblebee here or ecosystem elements or properties that are very surprising. And Debbie pointed to one that snow insulates. Snow insulates the ground. The depth of the snow can protect or actually make vulnerable the permafrost below. The structure of that snow matters. Similarly, there's something that is, I think, deeply fascinating when you learn that insects can overwinter at freezing temperatures. And so these elements of awe um, were really the driving force, I think, behind some of the original architecture of the structure of the whole project.
Mm.
And so I guess that's one way that we sketched out what we wanted to highlight. Literally, Klara sketched out, but then we, wove these elements throughout each paired poem, painting, and field note. And then in a lot of cases, in terms of writing the field note, it's kind of like doing any science writing. There's a brainstorm about what you know, and then, Klara, for instance, was speaking with a bee expert. I'm not a bee expert. And so I went and ended up doing some research about bees. I remembered learning about how they could overwinter in maybe my general ecology course as an undergraduate, but it caused me to go and read more about the bees of Alaska, et cetera. So just like preparing a lecture for class or writing for scientific audiences, there's part brainstorm and then part follow-up to learn more and then decipher what you want to highlight that is in complement to the painting and the poem. And I think what was neat about this process is originally, in many cases, there was sort of a scientific consultation that was driven by the aesthetic of what Klara produced and what Debbie was writing. But then by the final 3 paintings or so, there were some ecological ideas that actually may have come first in a way that helped us bring together the exhibit. And then Klara painted in response, or Debbie was writing in response. Would you describe it that way, Debbie?
Absolutely. Klara and I can get together easier than Becky, Klara, and I can get together because of her profession in Massachusetts. So in the beginning, Klara and I would work and work and work together, and then we would have a Zoom call with Becky.
Mm.
By the end, Becky, Klara, and I would have the Zoom call, and the vision for like the final third of this thing was definitely driven. We had completely immersed ourselves into a true 3-way synthesis of the design and vision of the ending. Well, the second half of this, really. It was very exciting. It's something we hoped to do, but we didn't know how it would roll out. And
Oh no,
we really enlightened one another along the way. And as we grew more familiar with each other, the the magic grew. into something where 1 + 1 + 1 did not equal 3. It equals something entirely separate.
Yeah, no, I think that speaks to the power of multidisciplinary work, collaboration, because the final product looks so seamless, but interesting to hear some of the background on how it developed over time. And as you were saying, Rebecca, how different parts motivated you to want to learn more about things. I think definitely taking away personally from the exhibition definitely has me searching for more information about a range of topics that you've covered. For the sake of time, we're going to move on to one other example. And what we're enjoying right here is Klara's piece, Telling Time. Debbie, just a very few words perhaps about this, and then we want to enjoy your poem.
Sure. So this painting is actually the eighth chapter, so to speak, in our narrative, which is in 10 chapters.
Mhm.
The chapter being an image, a poem, and a field note. So we have moved. The former painting was early September, late August, somewhere there. Now this is March. This is the glory days in Alaska. The sun is out, the snow cover is there. I know exactly what valley that is, and so does 50 other people, and they're all different valleys. But Klara did a beautiful job of I mean, we definitely March is the glory season, and we all live for following trails. If you look closely in that painting, there are trails along those hills and the riverbed. But below that, Klara is showing a zoom in and a abstraction of what may come, because those are beetle killed and wildfire killed spruce
Ah,
trees, and the birch forest is seeding and possibly coming next. And
mm.
beneath that, she's shown this lens of underground, of melting permafrost, the landscape beneath that was has been secure in frozen ice for many thousands of years. And the microbes that are released, the methane and other microbes that are being released as permafrost thaws and going into the atmosphere and bringing on the surge of the spruce bark beetle, the wildfire, and this change we're seeing all around us. So this is March, where things are getting confusing.
Can we please hear your piece, Telling Time?
Sure. 8, telling time. When daylight lengthens and the sun warms, winter's snow-clad glory lingers. Yet this springtime is different. Signals wink. 32 degrees Fahrenheit is leaving early. Snow is saturated. Avalanches strip gullies to ground. A white hair trembles on bare earth. Change disorients. One forest yields to another. Pond ice melts. Freeze captive bubbles. Gases rise earth to air. Endings and beginnings blend.
Wow. I mean, again, the collaboration is so strong and building on the exquisite artwork. I mean, you look at Clara's work and you just want it in your own house somewhere. It's just so stunning as a piece of art. But to hear your poem, to get at a little bit more of the message and the related field notes, Rebecca, that you title Forest in Flux, picks up on Debbie's introductory comments. Just a few words about your notes.
Yeah, so here we really just wanted to emphasize the global importance of the boreal forest. So this sort of reiterates some of the points that we made at the top of the program, that this is the largest terrestrial biome. There's a tremendous amount of carbon that's stored in the soils of this biome. We've got double the amount that's actually of carbon that is in the atmosphere, and that it's vulnerable to release from soils and from the ecosystems to the atmosphere. And also that because of warming with increased wildfire activity and changes in permafrost stability, we're seeing these transitions in vegetation, which Klara is noting in the painting, where we might see, instead of spruce forests as far as the eye can see, we might actually see a transition to aspen and birch or deciduous dominated forests, something like you would see in the Intermountain West or in Alberta. Um, and so the fate of the boreal forest, what it looks like, and all the ecosystem properties that go with a massive vegetation change are unknown. And there's both hope and possibility that are associated with that in terms of climate regulation, and also concern. And so we were trying to emphasize that in all three parts of chapter 8.
Debbie, what do you, Rebecca, and Klara hope visitors experience or feel as they walk through the exhibition?
I think our highest hope is that a visitor will be changed by it, that will find some unique way in, possibly to a topic they haven't been able to really grapple with. Or maybe it's somebody who just lives in another part of the country and doesn't understand what's going on in the boreal forest, and comes out. I guess we're all different. My highest hope is that actually this will inspire human to human conversation and exchange of ideas, because I feel like we're lacking that so much right now. And I think there are so many dimensions to these big, difficult problems we are facing and changes we are facing. And it has changed me to work with a scientist and an artist. And really, when you think about it, the three of us have a lot of similarities. But I'm really inspired to go out and get into an exchange with people really from different places, maybe geographically or culturally, because I think there's just so much to be gained. And the inspiration tends to override my lament about how things are changing so quickly.
Well said, well said. Rebecca, in just the minute or so we have
Mhm.
left, a chance for you to offer some thoughts and observations about either visitors going through or the impact this collaboration has had on you.
Sure. Yeah, I really agree with what Debbie has just shared. And one way in, I think, for all three of us has been a sense of curiosity. So the detailed nature of that forest floor vegetation captivates Klara's curiosity. And I'm captivated by that detail and what it means for carbon and nitrogen cycling.
Mhm.
And Debbie conveys, I think, the emotion around that curiosity, and so, or curiosity about our own emotions in response to that. And so I think that if we can spark curiosity, I'm so heartened that you want to follow up on the topics that became of interest to you when you saw the exhibit. If we can spark curiosity, whether on a scientific level or thinking about how did these three people communicate and produce something together, um, kind of speaking to Debbie's point, that is really what I hope for coming out of the visitor's experience with this project. Yeah.
No, and different to multiple locations and maybe even more in the future. I know underway is a film related to the exhibition. I enjoyed a wonderful trailer that people can find online. And in closing credits, we'll have more information about the exhibition as well as contact information for both of you. So, but unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. Much more to say, but want to thank you again so much for taking time to be here, informing us about the importance related to climate change, but as we've heard too, the unique and very informative collaboration between the three of you. Continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
As usual, I've learned a lot in this discussion.
Wonderful,
Yes, thank
wonderful.
you.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.